Hello and welcome to PerchPeek Pods, the only place to get long-form interviews with some of the world's leading global mobility folk. I'm delighted today to have Eddie Coronado with me from Uber. Eddie, introduce yourself to the community and tell us about how you came to the wonderful world of global mobility.
I'm Eddie Coronado. I'm sitting here remotely in Orlando, Florida. And I like to joke, like most people, I don't think anyone planned to go to being global mobility when they're in college. I want to grow up
Yeah.
and be a mobility specialist. But fell into recruiting and then had a great joy in working for global organizations. And since then, I've had the opportunity to work for some really amazing corporations such as Siemens, Electronic Arts, and currently at Uber as a talent program
Awesome. Awesome.
manager.
Tell us about that beginning. You started off in recruiting. How did that dovetail into mobility? I would say not the most typical sort of falling off point into the world of mobility. So what happened there?
Yeah, working in talent was kind of the desire to work with people. I
Yeah.
always like finding ways to improve organizations, and I think through talent is one of the best ways of doing that. Um, and then having an opportunity to work for a global organization such as Siemens, I jumped at that chance, and I loved working all things international. I love traveling. I love talking to people, so I had the opportunity to get a role there as a business travel consultant at Siemens, and that's kind of where I began my career in global mobility.
Okay, awesome, awesome, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely speak more about Siemens later because it's the infamous Siemens Global Mobility Program. So looking forward to getting stuck in there. But I also wanted to get stuck in. I really, really enjoy listening to you, watching you speak about talent mobility and how global mobility can support talent mobility, how it can support companies in general, how to set it up. Let's just maybe like frame the conversation. What do you mean by talent mobility?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of obscurity when it comes to the term talent mobility versus global mobility.
Yeah.
And I think the main differentiator is, or global mobility, traditional global mobility, is the physical relocation of individuals within an organization. Talent mobility incorporates that, has a lot of traditional global mobility functions,
Yeah.
all compliance, everything the same, but it does incorporate a little bit more of internal career mobility, which is allowing the employees or the talent to have internal career opportunities within the organization. So not only are we physically moving them around the organization to different locations for assignments, but we're getting them to be in different departments, different organizations, and to build different talent skills and pipelines. So it goes hand in hand. It's really fun.
Okay. And so it sounds like it's maybe a slightly broader scope in the sense of it's maybe there's like as you say, you're also trying to build and retain folk within that. It sounds awesome. To be honest, is this something that every global mobility leader should be lobbying internally to change from head of global mobility to head of talent mobility?
I have a firm belief that that should be the case.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that a lot of the programs that we manage in the talent mobility perspective, they fall perfectly aligned with the expertise and the knowledge base that a lot of global mobility professionals already have. It is a little bit more of a step up to gain additional skills to help, such as talent management and so forth. But it fits really well. And if you're an organization that looks trying to get more ROI from your mobility team, if you want to see how you can recoup costs, because most people see a global mobility team as a money pit. It's a compliance driven department. We only using it because we have to, because if not, we can face penalties and so forth.
Yeah.
But if you want to change that perspective in your organization and be more of a cost driver and helping with the overall strategy of an organization and be more in line with the business and actually help build value in a different way, then I say that it's definitely a program for you.
I love that. I love that. Millions of questions. You triggered me with ROI though. Let's jump in. Let's jump into that. Talk to us about how you can try to measure ROI in the context of talent mobility.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, how do we retain, engage, and upskill our talent? And through assignment programs such as rotation programs and traditional assignments that we know in global mobility, that's a good way to keep employees at an organization. And so not only are we facilitating the transactional piece of it and the compliance piece of it, but if you transition your mindset to think, how can we actually help with reducing attrition in general, not just facilitating the moves that come to us, there's a big way that you can actually help save an organization tons of money. There's a study that was researched by the Society of Human Resource Management, and they estimate the cost of replacing an employee can range from 50 to 200% of their annual salary, depending on the position in the industry and the organization. So you can imagine that losing one employee, it's quite costly to replace them.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways you can save money there.
Well, and so just to sort of follow that through line, I imagine replacing them's expensive. I guess your argument is talent mobility can help retain them. Tell us about setting up programs. I'm an employee. I'm about to leave because I'm fed up at Eddie's company. Tell me how talent mobility can help retain me.
Yeah, and it's really important to understand too, because the dynamic of the workforce is shifting. One of the interesting studies that was done by Deloitte is that it was called the Deloitte Millennial Study. Yeah. It estimated that 75% of the global workforce will be composed of millennials and Gen Zs by 2025. So that's next year.
Not far away. That's next year.
No, not it. So what do millennials and Gen Zs want in their workforce? Well, the number one thing that was mentioned is that they want to have opportunity for growth and development. And so I think in the past, a lot of the mindset of the organizations was people want stability, and that's what organizations can give you. But now it's what kind of experience can I get? What kind of opportunities to grow my skill base, or travel, or have opportunities where I can learn different things from different departments. And that's what the type of programs that we can offer in talent mobility. And so your question was, what kind of programs can we do? There's a large variety of programs.
Yeah,
and they can be something very cost effective. That's something called stay interviews.
Okay.
To, implementing a talent marketplace from external vendors to help get data driven expertise and get artificial intelligence involved. I mean, it's just the gamut is really wide on what you can do.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into a couple of those then. Talk to us about stay interviews and what they are.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most simplest programs that you can initiate in your organization. Stay interviews essentially is what you would consider like an exit interview. When an employee is already leaving the organization, you want to find out why they're leaving the organization. But in general, a stay interview can be the exact opposite. And last year, a lot of the tech companies, they had a hiring freeze. So during the years following COVID, there was a huge ramp up to hire a lot of people, and a lot of companies hired a lot of recruiters. And that seemed to kind of went down the hill in regards to the headcount. They're like, oh, we don't need much headcount anymore now that COVID's over. And so one of the things that some of the recruiters and some organizations were doing is that they were taking the time that these recruiters had, and they were calling up some of the talent, some of the employees, and asking them, what keeps you here at this organization? We identified you as a top talent person, and we want to make sure that you're enjoying your time here at the organization. How can we improve your experience? What's important for your career, and how can we facilitate that? So having that simple conversation, using resources that are already in-house, that you may have a surplus of time or resources and tasks that need to be done. You can utilize recruiters to do this. You don't have to call a vendor in, and it could be a 15-minute call for a target number of employees.
Love that. So a couple of aspects that I really love. One is sort of looking around and seeing the resources available to you. If you have surplus recruiters, what can you use them for? And that's such a nice little hack to get them involved. And two is sort of being proactive with employees, which I think members of the global mobility community always complain about it being reactive, right? You find out about someone's moving late, you're proactively doing the stay interview. Yeah, talk to us about talent mobility in the world of relocations then. I'm a disgruntled employee, but I could be motivated to maybe relocate, and that might be exciting for me. Like, how have you seen programs engage with people to encourage them to relocate either domestically or internationally, and that be a good way to retain people, which I think was a core part of your thesis there?
Yeah, I think the most important part of any organization is the culture that is instilled in that organization. And if there's a desire to have more internal movement within an organization, it comes from the top down. And employees are more willing to allow managers are more allowing to allow their employees to have these opportunities, then you can have amazing programs. One of the programs that we currently have at Uber is one of the programs that I really enjoy. It's called the Gigs program. And essentially it allows employees to be able to apply for other roles within their organization for 3-month projects. And the beauty of this is that they're actually able to retain their current role. They're able to maintain their full responsibility. So there's not a disruption to the business, but they're able to apply for different positions on different teams for 3 months. And they're able to attribute about 50% or about 7 hours weekly to the special project.
Wow.
And so allowing them to kind of get new experiences, new, build networks across different organizations. And for a lot of times, this ends up being where an open role may open up in the future. And this is a way to kind of get a talent pipeline to know who would be interested in the role, who has the skills. And it's been pretty successful.
I love that. And definitely speaking from my own experience when I was at Amazon, they saw internal mobility as, whether it be 3 months for the gigs program, which sounds like an incredible gateway, or longer term. And I have so many friends from the very first job I did at Amazon who moved from London to Seattle or Singapore or Sao Paulo or Sydney. And that was a great way to retain them. You can't promote people every 2 years. And so where's that growth and development going to come from? Okay, could be a new role that they do short term, do part time to learn new skills. Could be a relocation, and then someone's excited to challenge themselves in a different way. And I think that is so often overlooked because, as you say, mobility is sometimes seen as a money pit. And it's like, well, it's just going to be so expensive, and it doesn't need to be crazy expensive, does it? When you're sort of running these programs.
Definitely, and we have, like I said, those are simple programs, and then to the point we have full rotation programs where we're able to get people to different organizations within the company. They're able to actually go to different countries to have those experiences, and then they're there for a short period of time. So it's there's a wide range of programs.
Yeah, and for some of those more sort of longer term, someone's actually going to go internationally or relocate domestically, and it's an internal transfer. But I can hear sort of people saying, but what about the cost of that? Cost of traditional assignments are so much. You mentioned it. It's like 200% of their salary to replace someone. It could be that much just to relocate them. So what sort of relocation packages are you seeing? Don't need to go into exact specifics, but tell us a little bit about the type of support that you're providing for these internal talent mobilities.
Well, I think the number one thing is to be intentional on the people that we're selecting for these type of assignments. I think the current method is we have a specific need in an organization, a role is opened up. We need to get an employee that's qualified into that role there. Or the mindset should be, what are our top employees that we have that are going to be important for the organization, either in their current role or in the future? And how can we make sure that they stay at our organization? And what are some of the benefits we can have that? So we have to look more strategic and more long-term when it comes to talent management and employee succession. It's like, not only what benefits do we see now, but what can we see down the road and how it's going to impact the bottom line of the organization going forward. The relocation packages are pretty standard. I mean, I think we have based on the types of moves, and accordingly they get, and obviously if they're a single person, if they're coming with their family and so forth. Basically the idea is putting the employee as the primary resource that we're trying to gain the most engagement, the most value out of.
I love that. I love that, and it's sort of, I love that philosophy of not just viewing it as a money pit on the side of the mobility, but like, okay, how can we support the employee and getting them where they need to be? I mean, it's clearly incredibly impressive what you've helped set up at Uber, and the program there I know is pretty phenomenal from a talent mobility perspective. It's quite a lot more wide ranging than traditional global mobility, as you say. Gig programs, stay and choose. They're not aspects of why, like, they're not typical things that the average global mobility manager is doing day to day. So tell us, you mentioned at the start, mobility is well suited to talent mobility more widely. Why do you think that is?
The biggest reason, a lot of the mobility professionals already have the expertise and subject matter expertise, right? They already know what it takes to move employees from the organization. They have the compliance piece down. And the biggest aspect that I think is, how can we transition the mindset of the organization from like, hey, we're just focusing on compliance, versus we're focusing on how we can improve the internal fill rate within an organization. What kind of metrics outside of compliance can we incorporate into our team? And as we focus on those, how can we translate that back into cost savings to the organization? And
I
so I
love
think
that.
there's a thing to be a mind shift, but the skills are already there for the team. They already know how to move people around.
Yeah, and just to sort of follow that through, you're saying that you start tracking internal fill rate. You look at how many roles are being filled internally. If that goes up, you're demonstrating a cost saving by not having to pay recruiters, not having to have time with people not in seat. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. How do you quantify your cost savings, right?
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Tell us.
I
Give
mean,
us your
you
wisdom.
can. I mean, in traditional mobility teams, I mean, it's like, how much money did our vendors cost, or how much did our fees cost this year versus the previous year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when it comes to talent mobility, it's like we talked about. There's a lot of metrics in place that we can kind of review to kind of understand what cost savings are. It's I think about some of the metrics that we use. We have a lot of different metrics that we can utilize to understand how we're saving, the company money. And the biggest one for me is internal fill rate. For those who are not aware, it's, out of the percentage of all employees hired within a year, how many are actually filled internally? And what is known about internal fill is that employees who are brought onto the organization internally, they're a lot cheaper once to find because recruiting costs are very expensive. And not only that, the wrap-up time or period it takes to get an employee up to date with an organization and getting them onboarded is completely reduced. And as a result, you'll save money there. That's one of the most important figures, but there's definitely other metrics that you can use to kind of understand how we can how we can save an organization money.
Mhm.
There's employee engagement. You can monitor how engaged employees are. There's a lot of surveys that can be conducted to kind of quantify if the employees are more actively engaged, if productivity has gone up, net promoter scores. And in addition to that, we can see how much interest there are in internal roles within an organization. So if you see an increase of people actively applying for internal roles versus a decrease in that can tell about the current health of your organization and your talent desire to kind of continue to seek roles within your organization. And there's the whole gambit of metrics that you can use as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I can fairly certain with fair certainty guarantee is not many people are tracking their internal fill rate from the perspective of how mobility is helping that, when it absolutely can, and it can be such a powerful metric for that, as you say, reduces time to hire, etc. And reduces those recruiting costs, which are often so high. I think something we have conversations with people all the time is someone's put their hand up to say, I want to take this job in San Francisco, in Amsterdam, wherever it may be. Is that a true business-driven relocation, or do they want to move? What package should you give them?
I think every situation is very unique in regards to, understanding how these employees are moving around. And the relocation packages that are set up are very specific to the types of move, whether it's employee driven or if it's business driven.
Yeah.
Because by all means, every employee wants to have opportunities to progress or to have new experiences. So then that's something that is that needs to be managed, because you can't allow everyone, unfortunately, to kind of move around everywhere where they want to go. And so we do have opportunities though where it doesn't have to cost the company very much. You can allow your employees to have what we consider personal moves, where they're allowed to move into a different location. They're able to fit their own relocation. It's not going to be covered by the organization, but you still allow them that flexibility. You know what I mean? So those are something that a lot of organizations are simply not doing, because they want to have more control where their employees sit. And obviously there's some cost associated with fitting in different entities and so forth. But within within the means that's available to the organization, allowing employees to move like that, even if it's on their own dime, can be substantially beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's something that, to go back, come full circle to your point on mobility being seen as a money pit, it doesn't need to. Some people will literally move on their own dime and are excited that they're being allowed to relocate somewhere. Others are really excited to be able to receive some relocation support and be able to go work in a different, get a visa to live in somewhere and explore somewhere new, right? That's something that companies can tangibly support with oftentimes. And it's huge for people because it's not easy to live and work around the world. So, and it doesn't need to
Yeah.
be these kind of crazy old school packages. So really, really love that. Final one for me on this aspect of things. So I've got so many questions to ask you. We need to keep moving. Talk to me. I think a lot of people listening will be saying or thinking, okay, I'm sitting here. I'm head of global mobility. I've got my long-term transfers. I've got my permanent transfers. I've got maybe I'm helping with some short-term assignments as well. How do I go from here to all of this wonderful stuff that Eddie's talking about? What are the steps I should take? Who should I be speaking with to try and expand the scope of global mobility into talent mobility?
I think the first step is understanding what the overall business strategy of the organization is. It's really important to know that the majority of operating costs for any organization, up to like 80 to even some organizations 90%, is going to be on salaries, right? It's going to be on actually managing and paying people out to run the organization. And with that number of figure in head in your mind, if you're an organization that is currently a cost to an organization, and you can come with very low cost programs that will actually impact the bottom line, and you can quantify how you do that, and going to those who are the decision makers, then that's the key. And so I think the first step for an organization, if they want to kind of incorporate these things, is find out what scope of their organization, their mobility organization, it has currently.
Yeah.
Using the resources they currently have, what additional impact can they make? Because it would be easy to say, hey, we just hire more people, then we can do more work, right? That's not
the world we live in.
Everyone's doing. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Once upon a time.
Yeah. So, I mean, understanding what kind of additional work they can take on, finding out specific programs so they can make an impact where it will see an impact on the bottom line, incorporating those programs, and then coming up to leadership and say, hey, these are some of the programs you think can make a big impact because these are the issues we're currently seeing in our organization. So every organization is very unique. They have different, specific needs to kind of help with whatever problems we're going through. But there's a program for that. I mean, there's always a program for every way to tackle, whether it's attrition, whether it's engagement, whether you are having roles that are not being filled. One of the biggest ones is that a lot of times we have technical roles that are not being filled and they sit 90, 120 days without being filled. Well, how can you incorporate internal mobility practices to find internally talent that are being overlooked? What programs can you instill to kind of get those talents in there so that you can fill those critical roles and you actually are able to find growth within your organization? You know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, such sage words that's like people aren't using sometimes the data that already exists. But every organization is going to have roles that aren't being filled. They are going to have recruiter spend. Sometimes it might not neatly fit in that mobility bucket, but it can be used to sort of build that business case for change. Really, really love it. And it's just great to see the passion but for the space as well. Tell me about what's the sort of, I know you've had a lot of changes at Uber since you've been there, but it's not a massive mobility team, is it?
I think our team currently sits around like 13 individuals.
Okay.
And over the years, I think we were almost 23, but we've kind of reshaped our organization a little bit like most organizations. But yeah. So it's not definitely as big as Siemens. I think when I was there was like almost 300 individuals. So
wow. And so we have a lot of people may potentially looking around and they're sort of thinking, okay, would I enjoy being in a slightly smaller like team and organization, or would I enjoy being in one of the much bigger mobility teams? Tell us about what are like 2 or 3 of like the biggest differences in your day-to-day work when you're in a team of 300 versus a team of 13?
Well, I mean, my experiences are really unique at Siemens. I guess one of the things I would say specifically for big organizations is that generally your role will be the scope will be very specific. Yeah. You'll come in there, you'll have a specific role, and then you'll sit there and then you basically are within the influence of your own role. You don't have opportunities to have a lot of hats on when you do it with smaller organizations. But with that being said, that the organization was so big, there was a lot of opportunity for movement because people would be moving around and so forth. There was the opportunity to kind of apply for different jobs. So, I mean, you can still, find opportunities to try different things. And I think my time at Siemens, I think I had like 4 different roles within the 4.5 years that I was there. And it afforded me the opportunity to actually travel a lot. I got to go to Indonesia for my role. I got to go to Czech Republic and other places. So it was a great opportunity. Whereas at Uber, the smaller team, you have to, put on a lot of hats. You have opportunity to try new things. No day is the same. Every day is different.
Yeah.
You get to work on a variety of projects, and you get to work with a really specialized team, and you get a lot of support from your vendors, and you get to lean on them a lot more. So I would say those are definitely the main differences.
I love that. The sort of in the bigger in-house teams where obviously everyone uses vendors to some extent, but there's more internal knowledge versus much more leaning on your vendors in a smaller organization, and no 2 days being the same. You touched on the sort of being a leaner org. I think that resonates with so many people, and often now being asked to do more with less when it comes to like there's still so much work to do. He might be the same size, smaller a little bit. How are you thinking about yourself and your team becoming more efficient as things just stay as busy as ever or even busier than ever?
Yeah, I mean, there's always opportunities to improve, and I think leaning on the right partners, I think, is really crucial. Currently here at Uber, we're always looking for our best partners that coordinate with, and our vendors. And I think we've put a lot more effort into leaning into them. And so I think that's probably what we've been doing here to kind of gain more efficiency gains is, relying on our external partners, making sure that our scope and role and our, what we do as a team is clearly defined, so we don't get additional scope creep, because that's so simple and easy to happen in every organization.
Yeah.
And then just adding value, I think is number one, right? Is making sure that wherever we do that, we want to hit our goals and objectives, but also making sure that we have an increase in value and that we're showing that we're making a real big impact, not only within our team, but in the whole organization.
Nice. I love that. And adding value leads beautifully, Eddie, onto the final question of the day, which, as you know, we like to share a question from the previous guest. For our next guest, which today is yourself, Eddie. And the question from the previous guest today is, you're in the wonderful world where budget is not an issue at all. What one benefit would you recommend is included for any cross-border move?
What benefit would I give to any cross-border move?
Yeah, exactly. Budget's not an issue.
Well, I think a lot of organizations, they allow you to come to the country, I think like usually sometimes within like 3 weeks or 2 weeks prior.
Yeah.
To kind of, what I would say is I think there should be a minimum of before every move, you have a month paid vacation there.
Oh, nice.
Or you can go there, you can experience all the food, you can learn the language or whatever you want to do, go to language classes, meet the neighbors, do some hikes or whatever the case is. It's just an immersive month. When you go, you learn, just so that you can fall in love with the place, and that when you're working, you can feel energized and get right into the work.
I love that.
I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, well, and we'd start people off with some very positive memories about where they've just moved to as well, which is obviously expensive, but would be make you a very, very popular mobility leader and a very, very popular relocation program. I think you'd see a lot of applicants if you had a month-end holiday.
I mean, if you wanna make it where it's more cost effective, just put it at the end of the assignment. That if you complete your assignment, then you get 1 month in the country paid. So that way, it's motivation towards.
100%. It's like
maybe more of a business case for that.
It's like a positive clawback instead of trying to claw it back if they leave. It's like you get this if you stay, which is kind of cool.
Exactly.
I absolutely love it. It's such a good one. And if there's anyone out there that has a policy like that, let us know, because that sounds very cool. Although it does take me back to catching up with Mark from. He's done so many good. But do you know Mark? He actually worked at Uber for a bit. But anyway, he was telling me about when the Maldives used to be considered a hardship location And so you used to have like extra holiday allowance if you got sent on assignment to the Maldives. And I was like,
Oh, really?
yeah, like that sounds like the good old days. Just
Oh man.
that, yeah, it's like because you know how it's like a hardship, you got to take some time off, and it's like, okay, not the end of the world in the Maldives, I don't think.
I'll throw my hat in there. If anybody wants to send me to the Maldives, I
Yeah,
can go without the hardship paying. So feel free
yeah,
to send me.
I love that. I love that. Well, Eddie, thank you for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and to hear your passion for all things talent mobility, I think will be very eye-opening for a lot of people listening, and shows, I think, really where our industry is going in terms of trying to have that wider impact on the people, as you say, within the organization. So thank you very, very much for coming on. Excellent job by you.
I appreciate that. Thanks for the invitation.
Cheers, buddy. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.